speech is involved, and it's sort of this area I talked about in my opening statement, which is, so, and really in particular, I want to understand what the current policies and practices are as we speak regarding content moderation, specifically in speech. So just for, as I'm reading, and I'm not reading the opening statement from Meta, we're constantly working to stop the spread of misinformation and disinformation. We have built the largest independent fact-checking network of any platform, nearly 100 partners from around the world, to review and rate viral misinformation in more than 60 languages. Stories that this platform, or these group of people rate as false, are shown lower in feed. And if some page repeatedly creates or shares misinformation, we significantly reduce their distribution and remove their advertising rights. Let me explain. We're not talking about the stuff that was up here. That's fake content. That's just purely fake content. It's generated to look like Fox News or Wall Street Journal, New York Times. That's not, no one's arguing that. That's fake. That should be taken down. Those companies should want it taken down. That's their copyright and their logo and their letterhead. I'm talking about this. So you've got a group of people that I think are your fact checkers from all over the world to determine where something is true or not. So let me take you back to a real world scenario, which ties into what the CEO of the company said, and that is there were people at one point saying, maybe I believe that the pandemic began in a lab. I believe there was an accident in the lab and it leaked out. And at one time, that was considered not factual. And in fact, there was pressure from government officials on companies not to report on that. How would that work today? A story like that, who determines whether that's true or not? Because it wasn't true then, but all of a sudden now it is 50% maybe likely. How would something like that, because there are people that were caught up in that. I imagine that under the policies that you describe, if I was out there or someone was out there raising the specter of a potential lab leak, it would run through these fact checkers from 100 partners all over the world. They would decide whether it's true or not. And you could have your page diminished, potentially deplatformed if I write too much about it. So how does this policy deal with that problem that I just described, which is a real world one?
Senator, yes, indeed it is. And as I said in my opening statement, we are obviously, we all inhabit a world of imperfect information, and crucially, and I think the pandemic was a very good example of that, information which changes. And obviously with the benefit of hindsight, we now understand the epidemiology of the pandemic, which we didn't at the time. When we were in the middle of the pandemic, prior to the vaccines being rolled out, when people were dying, when really no one knew what the trajectory was of this global pandemic, we as an engineering tech firm, of course, we're not specialists in
Yeah, but I'm not asking what happened. I understand what happened. I want to know how this policy today would prevent that from happening. Because if the government is telling you this is a lie, we have proof that it's a lie, take it down, and your fact checkers say it's a lie, then my account gets blocked, gets diminished today, if that happened today.
Right.
Now.
So two things. Firstly, we do continue to rely on these independent fact checkers. We don't employ them. They're not part of Meta. They're independently vetted by a third-party organization.
Who are they?
Oh, there's a variety of organizations which specialize in examining what they think is a reliable way of asserting whether something is missing.
Is there a way to know who those vetters are?
Oh, yeah,
Is there a list somewhere?
We have a full list, absolutely. We can provide them to you. And they obviously work in multiple languages, including the United States. I think there are 11 fact checkers in the United States, and we can provide you with all the information on them. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, and Mark Zuckerberg did indeed explain this in his recent letter to the House Judiciary Committee, I think we learned our lesson, certainly as Meta is concerned, that in the heat of the moment, when governments, and it's governments around the world, exert particular pressure on us, on particular classes of content which they are particularly focused on, we need to act always, and we strive to do this, but of course we make mistakes, we need to act independently, and we need to be resistant to the sort of passing moods and passions around particular bits of content, which was particularly the case during the pandemic. People were, in effect, in a panic.
Let me, in a different context, the exact same system, a laptop appears, and 51 people sign a letter saying, we used to work in the intelligence community, this is Russian disinformation, and your fact checkers say, we got to listen to the experts, they would know. Does the New York Post get their account taken down again?
So to be very clear, we did not take down the account or the content. I think X, who are not here, but they did. We did
right, but under this policy, if you deem it to not be true because it's disinformation because some guys signed a letter saying that it would lower them in the feed and potentially reduce their distribution. And if they post that story too many times, you may actually lock them out.
So in
for
this
this policy?
Sorry, in this instance, Senator, you're correct that that story was demoted in its... I mean, it was always available. Millions of people saw it. But its prominence on our services was temporarily reduced, and we used to do that to allow the fact-checkers to give them the space and the time to choose to then examine that content. In this instance, the Hunter Biden story, they didn't do so. So that temporary demotion of a few days was then released, and it circulated.
Did the fact checkers reduce or demote the 51 people who signed the letter or the letter they signed? Because that turned out to be not true.
I don't believe they did so at the time, no.
All right, thank you.
Senator Heinrich.
So I want to stay on this same topic of the sort of